And so when I say failure now, I want you to think of redirection. Everything has worked out for you in divine timing in the exact way it needs to have. I actually want you to fail. And the more we fail, the more we are in the know about what's working best for us and what's not. Every time you fail, you are not falling behind. You're actually learning faster than somebody who's playing it safe. Hello and welcome to another episode of the In Her Power podcast. If you're listening to us in real time, happy Monday. I hope you are all doing so incredibly well. Before we get stuck into today's episode, I have a very important request from every single one of you that's listening to us right now or watching us on YouTube right now. If you're listening on one of our podcast streaming platforms, either Spotify or Apple Podcast or beyond that, wherever you're listening, streaming us, we would love if you could pretty please give us a review, a comment review, a star review. Follow us if you can. And if you are watching us on YouTube, hi, so good to see you. It would mean the absolute world to me, to the podcast, if you could give us a like, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment if you're feeling generous. Every ounce of interaction and engagement, support really adds up. It compounds over time and it allows us to continue to do what we do. And we just love to see how the episodes resonate with you, because that then helps us create and brainstorm our next round of episodes and concepts. It allows us to find what you want to hear more about and what you don't really care that much about. So please, if you're listening, watching, no matter where it is you are consuming us today, it would mean a lot if you could leave a review, follow, subscribe, like, do what you gotta do. You know how it works. In today's episode, we are talking about a concept very near and dear to my heart, and one that I have really worked hard at untangling, debunking, and unpacking pretty much since going out on my own, quitting my 9-to-5 and going to do my own thing in the big, bad, scary world. I'm talking pursuing my personal brand. I'm talking growing my business, The Habit Tracker, and growing this brand, the In Her Power podcast. And that is all about failure, quote unquote. Now, before I get stuck into today's episode, there's something I really want to talk about and touch on so that it allows you to have some context for the rest of the video / podcast. When I say failure in today's episode, I don't mean being a failure. I don't mean being a screw up. I don't mean being good at nothing, amounting to nothing. I truly don't believe in the true term failure. I believe that every quote unquote failure directs us into something bigger, better, new, different, something we need to do to replace what we've quote unquote failed in or at. So when I bring up the word failure, which I will do so a lot in today's episode, I want you to not think of the traditional means of failure. As I said, I like to think of, or used to think of, failure as amounts to nothing, bad at what you do, not worthy of, brings nothing to the table, no value, was a bit of a flop. But in today's episode, we're flipping that on its head and we're taking failure as a little bit more of a positive, and we're going to see failure in a little bit more of a positive light. And so when I say failure now, I want you to think of redirection, a lesson, a learning. I want you to think of it as, okay, this didn't pan out or work out in the way that I had planned, but that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. And in today's episode, we're going to work on, and I'm going to break down the ways in which you can reframe failure in your mind so that you actually take failure as part of the formula to growth. It is actually a requirement of you to fail so that you can grow, be better, do better, think better, work better, become a better person. So let's get stuck into it. I am so excited. So I have two personal stories that I'm going to talk about today. And if I had told you these stories 4 or 5 years ago, I would have been a little bit self-conscious around them. I would have been a little bit like, oh yeah, I know I kind of failed with that, but now I'm doing this. And I would almost like try and justify why these were failures and like kind of lean into that negative bias when it comes to failures. But these two stories that I'm about to share with you today, in hindsight, two of my most pivotal moments in my life, and they are basically what makes up my story. So the first one is, and some of you may not know this, but I was actually meant to be a primary school teacher. I was studying primary education at a university here in Australia. I got 3 years into that 4-year degree and decided, you know what, nah, can't do it. I'm pulling out. I'm withdrawing. Being a teacher is not for me. When I tell you the HECS debt I have, and by HECS debt, if you're not from Australia, It's kind of like our student loan. The HECS debt I have because of that degree. I don't want to talk about it. I want to think about it. It's still lingering over my head to this day. However, even though I never actually technically finished that degree, that time in my life, those 3 years were such important years for me now. I learned so much about, the importance of deadlines. I learned grit. I understood how well I worked under pressure. I became a more book smart, quote unquote, book smart human as a byproduct of reading things I didn't really care about, but pushing myself to do it. There were so many lessons and learnings, so many moments for me to really character build here. Going through that yucky period of my life and then withdrawing anyway could actually have been a bit of a quote unquote failure for some. But for me, this added so much context to my story. In hindsight, so much of who I am today is actually because of that experience through university. The second, failure that some people may hang above my head, or a failure that I once considered a failure, was back in 2020 when COVID hit. I decided I was going to do social media management. I wanted to help my clients and other people, brands, business owners grow their social media. I'm good at that. After my teaching degree, I then pivoted and I went into a marketing degree, which is where I found my love for social media and marketing and e-commerce and the digital space, basically. And so I had a lot of knowledge under my belt. I had a fantastic, thriving social media management business for basically a good chunk of 2 years, and decided, you know what? No, I'm pumping all this time and energy into building my clients' social media when I actually wanted to focus on building my own. Again, for some who saw that business's closure would have thought, oh, that maybe failed. Maybe she didn't do as well as she thought she did. Spoiler, I was doing very well. And from a logical stance, it actually made no sense to shut that down. However, so much of that experience, that business, those clients, that strategy, I now implement into building my own empires. And that's exactly what they're becoming: my personal brand, my business, and my podcast. So as you can see, these two personal stories from a surface level, as someone that does not know me, as someone that is watching from the sidelines, will probably be considered failures. For me, they were actually a redirection to point me exactly where I needed to be. And if I hadn't gone through those two things in particular, I would not be where I am right now. And sometimes you do actually have to zoom out and say to yourself, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have met that person. I wouldn't have had that lesson. I wouldn't have taken that subject. I wouldn't have gone down this path. I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. And there's this compound effect. Everything has worked out for you in divine timing in the exact way it needs to have, so that you can be where you are right now. Listening to this podcast right now is meant to happen. It's part of your story. What you absorb from today's podcast episode is going to be part of your story, because you're then going to finish this episode and implement it. Your first baby step is going to be done. Then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. And before you know it, you are well and truly on your way to chasing whatever it is that you are doing or going after. Because if you're here and you're listening, you're a go-getter at heart. You truly are. There's no other reason why you'd be here listening or watching. You are looking for the answers to reframe. And if you're listening to this podcast episode in particular, you've clicked here for a reason. You are probably interested in overcoming that disgusting, unnecessary guilt around quote unquote failure and looking at ways to reframe the concept. And it all starts up here. And if you're not watching us in video form, I'm pointing to my brain. So when I sat down to plan out this episode, I really got clear to myself as to why I used to fear failure so incredibly much. It boiled down to two primary things and to two primary mindsets. And really reiterating here, these are mindsets. They are not truths. No one has actually told me this. This is what I have made up in my brain based on pressure I put on myself as a byproduct of societal pressures. So the first one is, I used to think if I failed, quote unquote, or something flopped or it didn't work the way I wanted it to, I was done. Game over. Can't recover from this. I'm not good enough. I don't bring enough to the table. The market's too saturated. It's all about me, me, me. Nothing is working. I'm a flop. I'm a failure. I'm a negative. I'm a piece of poo, basically. If you are someone that can really resonate with that, like you truly fear failure because you think, oh, I've tried so hard at this and then it's over if I fail, fail, it's game over, I'm done, I'm not enough. I want you to reframe this. I want you to think of failure as a necessity. And I did mention this a little bit earlier. I actually want you to fail. I actually want you to have a few projects here and there, or social media posts, or YouTube videos, or concepts to flop every once in a while. Every single time I outsource or I hire someone to be in my team or to work on a project-to-project basis with me, I tell them, please be okay with failing. I am okay if you fail, because this is just sharpening our knives, basically. We are refining our path. We are refining our direction. And the more we fail, the more we are in the know about what's working best for us and what's not. So when we do fail, it's almost as if we're like gathering all this data. We are going to figure out, yep, this is what we're going to do more of. People love this. This is what resonates. You know, my employer thinks this is fantastic. This has moved the needle in my business or my workplace or in my life. And then we're actually going to get rid of the stuff that has flopped, or the stuff that has quote unquote failed, or the stuff that just maybe didn't resonate. And we get to build upon this as we progress in our journey, as we progress in our business, our career, our health and fitness journey, whatever it is. So failure is a necessity. In my team, it's encouraged. And arguably, if you are not failing, I think we're doing it wrong. And I'm not saying we need to fail all the time, but I want my team to be constantly trying new things. Of course, keeping in mind what we know works, always circling back to that. But in order to stand out as a brand and a business, you need to do something different every once in a while. You have to level up. You have to elevate the content, change your editing style, or change concepts and introduce something new. And most of the time, while you're doing that trial and error phase, some of it's going to flop. That is perfectly fine. We jot that down, we collate that data, and we move to our next level. The other reason that I think we fear failure so much, and this is what I feel, is that failure is often perceived as a weakness. It is often perceived as something that someone does when they don't know what they're doing, or they're not good enough, they're not strong enough, not powerful enough in their field, and we consider that as something to avoid at all costs. We consider it a weakness. Again, I consider it a strength. How powerful is it that you now have cold, hard data, cold, hard evidence, a cold, hard truth as to what does not work? We're going to bank this data away. Remember this whenever we are coming up with something new or trying something new. Hey, this didn't work in this exact way. Can we maybe attack this at an angle that I think might work? Still take what the failed concept was, but maybe angle it differently. Maybe come at it differently. Maybe speak to it a little bit differently. There is so much power in the trial and error phase, and a failure is a strength, not a weakness. And I want to remind you something that I think about all the time, and this is arguably one of the most powerful mindsets to harness. This is truly a growth mindset at its core. Every time you fail, you are not falling behind. You're actually learning faster than somebody who's playing it safe. I would prefer to fail 10 times over doing what I love and trying to stand out and make noise and make impact than not fail at all, but be the person that is stagnant and too scared to move. I challenge you to consider, who would you prefer to be? Of course, failing in public is scary. It's embarrassing sometimes when things flop. Guys, pieces of content of mine flop all the time. It's fine. But now I know, I take that, I bank that data, and I now know what not to do again. When things pop off, they go viral, they resonate, they make noise, they create impact. We do that time and time and time again. This is how it works. Failing is a necessity to your growth. Do not avoid it. Tackle it. Come at it at all costs. This is where you are going to become the most invincible human. This is a growth mindset to its core. How can I grow? Perfect. I've got the trajectory. I've got the path, and I'm actually okay to mess up. I'm actually okay to fail. I'm actually okay for things to flop here and there. How you learn from that and take that in your stride is going to be the catalyst. It's going to be what sets you apart from everyone else. So while you are going going down the path, going down the trajectory. You know exactly where you're going to go. You know exactly how you're going to get to your goals. It's a little bit scary. You may not even know how to truly get there at every step, but you can see the vision. You can see the path. We're scared of failure though. That's perfectly fine. We're going to go through some ways in which that we can move past failure. It's inevitable, guys. And if you're avoiding it, I'm sorry, cold hard truth, you are playing small. You are going to be stuck exactly where you are because doing the scary thing requires you to do something you typically wouldn't. And let's take social media as an example. Every single time I have either gone viral, which not pushing this is something you need to do, but going viral is fantastic for growth. Those vein metrics, your engagement, your followers. And of course, often that sometimes trickles over to new customers, new leads, new source of revenue, whatever it is. Let's take social media as the example. Every single time I have gone viral or something has really made noise, it's been picked up by other creators or it's been spoken about in news articles, whatever it is, that was a byproduct of me going against the grain, doing something completely different. And with that comes the possibility of failing. If you are not doing that regularly, I'm not saying you're going to do it every week, I'm not even saying you're going to do it every month, but if you are just posting the same stuff week in, week out, same concepts, same tone of voice, same editing style, same this, same that, I'm sorry, you're not making enough noise. This is social media. And if you want to stand out, you make the noise, you make the impact. But that requires you to do different. It requires you to stand away from the crowd and do your own thing. So I have written down, and if you're watching us in video form, I'm going to glance down because I've got some notes here for you, but this is how we're going to turn your flops into fuel. So number one, when something maybe does flop, whether it's a social post, whether it's a concept, maybe you've pitched an idea in a meeting at work and everyone's like, no, this is what we're going to do. Let's reflect on it, but do not dwell. Why didn't this work? Let's ask for feedback. If it's a social post, let's have a look at analytics. Let's ask our audience, did you guys enjoy this piece of content? If not, I would love for you guys to message me or send me a DM or, comment, then write it down. What happened? Let's get clear. Let's, define some clarity here and let's make sure that we don't do this again. Store this somewhere that you can access all the time. I have a lot of friends in the e-commerce space, and whenever they have a really good launch campaign or a Black Friday sales campaign, they will actually write down every single step that they did, what email they sent out and what time, what was the title, what was the subject, what was this, what was that. They have an entire list of things that work and an entire list of things that flopped. And that is their fuel. This is refining their journey to success. This is growth mindset at its core. Next, I want you to identify the lesson, not the loss. Do not worry about what you've quote unquote lost in the process. Maybe it's just a blow to the ego. You're okay. You're still safe, but what is the lesson here? So what is this trying to teach me from like an analytical, logical point of view, but also like from a mindset, soul level? What is this teaching me? How did I react and why? How can I be better? How can I think better, do better, interpret this better next time? My next failure, my next flop, because guess what? They're coming. It's inevitable. We need to get better at reacting better and taking the lesson in our stride a little bit better. Next, you're going to pivot. You're not going to panic. You're gonna pivot. So really coming back to my stories, my two personal stories about the university degree. I pivoted and I changed degrees, which then led into what I do right now. Same goes with my social media management stuff. I pivoted quite literally, shut down the business and went ham, went all in on my own socials. And look where we are now. So pivot, do not panic. And the final step here, you're going to embrace the discomfort, sit in it, lean into it. Let this add some fuel to your fire. Oh, I don't want to feel like this again. Let's take this lesson, this learning, document it, write it down, get clarity as to why it happened, but embrace that discomfort. Because again, for myself, when something is flopped or it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, I'm like, oh, this actually makes me want to do better. This actually makes me want to level up in this way. This actually makes me want to post a better post, make more noise, make more impact. So embrace the discomfort and channel it as fuel. It's fuel to your fire. Harness it in that way. So to really end this episode, I just wanted to remind you, your biggest and best growth is going to be on the edge of discomfort. And a lot of the time, especially if you're in business, especially if you're trying to make a name for yourself, especially if you're trying to make something out of who you are, what you bring to the table, a business, personal brand, podcast, you're going to fail. You need to chase that because this is where you're going to define and refine your journey. It's so incredibly important. And the second we stop taking failure as a negative or as a weakness, better off we're all going to be. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to really harness that growth mindset. As always, thank you so much. I love you so much. I'll see you in my next episode.